She planned to spend Thanksgiving alone, until a stranger in a snow-dusted coat knocked, smiled softly, and changed everything she thought she'd lost. Thanksgiving found Elena wrapped in the kind of silence that feels less like peace and more like a room remembering laughter that isn't there anymore. The morning light filtered through her kitchen window in pale gold, illuminating steam rising from the kettle like ghosts of conversations once shared. The house was clean, too clean, polished counters, neatly arranged plates, and a single chair set at the head of the table. The other chairs waited like old companions, pushed back as though expecting someone who would never arrive. She moved slowly, methodically, the way people do when routine becomes their only company. The turkey had roasted for hours, glazed perfectly, the scent rich enough to make any home feel full, except this one. Her hands were steady, practiced, but her eyes betrayed something softer. Every now and then she would pause, stare at the empty space across the table, then force herself back into motion as though busy hands could silence a lonely heart. Outside, families celebrated. Laughter carried faintly through frosted air when neighbors opened doors or children ran across snowy yards. Elena stood by her window, watching distant silhouettes move like scenes from a life she used to live. She touched the glass with her fingertips, cold, solid, a boundary between her and the warmth she no longer reached for. She told herself solitude wasn't sadness. It was freedom, independence, a calm she had earned. But truth sat quietly beneath her ribs, pulsing like a secret she refused to name. She missed being needed, missed being held without words, missed the comfort of someone choosing her, not out of obligation, but out of desire. That morning she woke early, baked pies she knew wouldn't be finished, laid out the good plates she rarely used. She didn't expect anyone. She just wasn't ready to stop hoping. She folded the napkins with gentle precision, smoothing the fabric flat as though controlling wrinkles might also smooth the ache inside her. As she prepared tea, her reflection in the kettle caught her eye. A woman of quiet grace, strength weathered beautifully by time, hair pinned loosely with a few rebellious strands softening her profile. She was not forgotten by life. She simply didn't know where to place her love anymore. Then there is Alex, though we do not meet him fully yet, only through the narrator's voice. A younger man with thoughtful eyes who, by chance or something deeper, is moving through a different part of the city at that very moment. He doesn't know her name. He doesn't know her story. But somewhere in him, there exists the same quiet yearning for connection, for a moment real and unfiltered. Two lives, one seasoned, one still learning, both carrying unspoken loneliness like a lantern in the dark. They do not know it yet, but Thanksgiving is about to offer something neither expected. Not romance, not fireworks, something simpler, more profound, the beginning of being seen again. It was nearly evening when the knock arrived, one gentle, uncertain tap that barely disturbed the quiet of Elena's living room. She froze mid-step, fingertips still resting on the back of the chair she had just pushed in. For a moment, she wondered if she imagined it, perhaps a wandering branch or the house settling into winter. But then it came again, slightly firmer this time, as though whoever stood outside was summoning the courage to be heard. Elena's pulse stumbled. No one was expected. No one ever came unannounced. The hallway to the front door felt strangely long as she walked toward it, her slippers brushing softly over the hardwood floor. Through the frosted glass, she saw only a silhouette, tall, unmoving, patient. Her breath caught. She hesitated with her hand on the doorknob, the past and present folding into each other. For years, holiday knocks had meant family arriving, laughter spilling in with coats and gifts. Today, it meant a stranger, or no one at all. She inhaled, gathered herself, and opened the door. Snowflakes drifted around him like tiny white sparks. Alex stood there, jaw defined, eyes warm despite the cold, hair lightly tousled by wind. His coat was dusted with snow, sharp contrast against the fading amber light behind him. Yet something about him didn't feel imposing or grand. He looked human, reachable, almost relieved to see another soul. "Hi," he said, voice steady but softened by a hint of uncertainty. "I'm sorry to bother you. My driver took a wrong turn. I've been walking a while, trying to get my bearings." His breath rose in pale clouds between them. Elena blinked, trying to place him. He didn't look like someone who usually asked for directions. Not with shoes polished like midnight, nor the subtle elegance in the way he stood. Posture relaxed, but refined. There was something quietly powerful about him. Not loud wealth, just presence. She glanced over his shoulder. The street was mostly deserted, everyone indoors, tables full, lives in motion. He looked out of place not because he didn't belong, but because he shouldn't have been alone today. "You must be freezing," she murmured, instinct overriding hesitation. "Come inside for a minute. Warm up." He blinked, surprised not by the invitation, but by the kindness in it, as if warmth was something he rarely received without condition. "Thank you," he breathed, stepping forward with caution, like he feared he might disrupt the space simply by entering. Snow melted instantly on her welcome mat, darkening the woven threads like new footprints in untouched snow. The moment he crossed the threshold, everything shifted, subtly, silently, like air adjusting around a new presence. Elena felt it first as a flutter, a nervousness she hadn't known in years. He smelled faintly of winter and cedar, and the way he looked around, respectful, curious, not assuming, made her feel oddly seen. Not pitted, seen. He took in her carefully set table, the candle waiting to be lit, the single plate and second chair that hinted at longing. Something softened in his expression, recognition, maybe, or empathy. "Looks like I interrupted a holiday," he said gently. Her answering smile was small, almost shy. "You didn't interrupt anything." Not really. And though neither knew it yet, that knock was not an accident. It was the quiet beginning of a connection both had been missing without knowing where to find it. Elena wasn't prepared for company. Certainly not the kind that stood in her doorway like he belonged to another world entirely. And yet, it was astonishing how naturally hospitality carried her forward. With a steady breath and a quiet nod, she moved toward the dining room, her steps slow, almost ceremonial. Alex followed at a respectful distance, taking in the subtle details of her home. Framed photographs, shelves of worn books, candles arranged with gentle intention. Nothing extravagant, but everything full of care. The table still waited as it had all day. Turkey browned to perfection, herbs perfuming the air with rosemary and thyme, pie cooling on the counter like a promise no one was meant to taste. Elena hesitated only a second before reaching into the cupboard for a second plate. Porcelain with faded blue edges. It was clear from the way her fingers paused that it hadn't been used in a long time. She ran a thumb across the pattern almost tenderly, then set it down beside her own place setting. Alex noticed, not with pity, but with quiet appreciation. He removed his coat, draping it neatly over the back of a nearby chair. Beneath it, his attire was clean, high quality, but not extravagant. Most people with wealth wore it like armor. He wore it like background, as if he'd spent enough years being defined by it and no longer wanted to be. "May I help with anything?" he asked. Elena glinket surpriset. Most guests would wait to be served. His tone wasn't performative. It was genuine, almost eager to share the moment rather than simply receive it. She handed him the carving knife. Their fingertips met briefly, a fleeting electric brush. Not dramatic, just real. Together, they plated food, the familiar rhythm of hosting coming back to her like muscle memory long and used. She watched him work beside her, the way his shoulders relaxed, the subtle gratitude in his movements. He didn't hover or command. He aligned with her pace, her energy. It felt like partnership, even though they were strangers. They sat. Candlelight flickered between them, softening shadows into something intimate. Snow tapped gently against the window like an old song. Alex took his first bite, eyes closing with a slow exhale that sounded almost like relief. "This tastes like a home," he said quietly. Elena's laugh was small but warm, a laugh she hadn't heard in herself for far too long. They talked while they ate, conversation unfolding like pages turning themselves. He shared stories of business dinners where the food was exquisite, but the chairs beside him always felt empty, of headlines that claimed to know him. The billionaire, the success, but none that reflected the man, still learning how to feel. Elena listened with a patience that made him open further, as though her silence invited truth. She told him about traditions she used to celebrate, about friends scattered across cities, about the strange ache of being surrounded by memories no one shares with you anymore. Between them grew something delicate but unmistakable, connection stitched not by grand gestures, but by the simple act of being witnessed. When their eyes met, neither looked away quickly. The moment stretched, not tense but promising, as if both sensed that loneliness had just stepped aside to make room for something warmer, something two hearts might learn to hold together. After dinner, the soft kind that fills more than stomachs, Elena rose with a gentle smile and motioned toward the living room. Alex followed, not with the impatience of a guest waiting to leave, but with the ease of someone who had forgotten he wasn't meant to stay. The fireplace sat at the far wall, dark but ready, logs stacked neatly, matches waiting in a small ceramic bowl. She hadn't lit it in years. Not since holidays meant voices and warmth instead of flickering television light and the hum of quiet rooms. Tonight, though, felt like reason enough. She kneeled to strike the match, hand steady, breath slow. The flame caught instantly, dancing across the wood, growing, settling into a steady crackling glow that cast the room in warm amber hues. When she stood, Alex was watching her, not with scrutiny, but with the kind of attention most people give to sunsets or gentle snowfall. She pretended not to notice the way his gaze lingered, pretended, too, that her heart hadn't just given a slow, unexpected thrum. They sat on the sofa, not side by side, but near enough that the space between them felt intentional, like an unspoken invitation waiting to be answered. The fire painted shifting patterns across the walls, and for a moment, neither spoke. Silence here wasn't absence. It was presence. Comfortable, quietly electric. Elena offered a blanket, a soft woolen one folded neatly at the chair's edge. When Alex reached to take it, their fingers brushed, a brief, gliding contact. Her skin warm from the fire, his cool from lingering winter air. The spark that passed between them wasn't dramatic. No flutter of music, no cinematic swell. Just a subtle jolt, a reminder that human closeness can speak without words. He didn't rush to pull away. She didn't apologize. Instead, their hands lingered a second longer than necessary, long enough for both to feel something shift. Not commitment, not expectation, just curiosity wrapped in softness. Alex draped part of the blanket over his legs, then offered the other edge to her. She accepted, settling closer, not touching yet, but the distance had halved, and somehow her heartbeat felt twice as loud. His presence had weight, not heavy, but grounding, the kind of calm that settles into a room and makes the world feel less sharp. They spoke in low voices, paced like slow breathing. He told her how crowds could feel lonelier than empty rooms, how wealth didn't buy warmth, and success didn't fill quiet holidays. Elena shared small fragments, the loss of yearly gatherings, the way time quietly rearranges your life until you're not sure when togetherness became memory instead of routine. Sometimes they fell quiet again, letting the fire speak for them. Crackling warmth, shifting embers, light reflecting in his dark eyes and softening her thoughtful ones. When she leaned back, her shoulder nearly brushed his. When he adjusted, his knee angled subtly toward her. Neither mentioned it. Both felt it. There was no rush, just two people warming beside each other, not just by fire, but by presence. A closeness forming not through grand declarations, but through gentle proximity. A living room filled with two steady breaths, two softened hearts. Warmth was no longer only in the room. It was between them. You said, night settled slowly around the house, the kind that makes the world feel distant, like everything beyond these walls belonged to another life, another time. Inside, the fire glowed deeper, embers pulsing like a heartbeat. The living room was dim now, lit only by shifting firelight and the faint orange reflection dancing across the windows. Alex sat beside Elena, still sharing the blanket, their bodies angled just enough toward each other to suggest comfort, but not yet certainty. It was the kind of closeness that asks rather than assumes. Minutes passed in gentle waves, stories, laughter, silences soft enough to lean on. But at some point, the conversation changed. It didn't fall apart. It deepened, like a river narrowing into something stronger. Alex set down his mug, exhaled slowly, and allowed vulnerability to surface in his eyes. Not dramatic, not heavy-handed, just real. People think having everything means you can't be lonely, he said quietly, watching the flames instead of her. But I've never felt more alone than at tables filled with strangers calling themselves friends. Elena didn't answer right away. She studied him. The way his hands clasped loosely, relaxed but searching. The way his voice lowered like someone speaking a truth he rarely let escape. Most people saw him as success. Few, it seemed, saw him as a man, complicated, imperfect, hungry for connection the way everyone is. She shifted slightly toward him, enough so her knee touched his beneath the blanket. Gentle, steady, a silent "I hear you." He looked up then, eyes reflecting firelight, bright but achingly earnest. "You're the first person who has asked how I feel in a long time," he admitted. "Not what I own, not what I plan next. Just me." The words settled between them like fallen snow, soft, fragile, undeniable. Elena swallowed, her throat tight, with empathy she didn't expect to feel so strongly. "I know what it's like," she murmured, "to be surrounded by noise and still feel like the quietest person in the room. To have people love the idea of you, but not stay long enough to notice when the real you is hurting." Her voice tremored at the end, just enough to reveal her truth. She looked down at her hands, folded neatly in her lap like they were holding something fragile together. For a moment, Alex simply watched her, every word she said landing in him like a key turning in a locked door. "Elena," he whispered, and her name and his voice sounded like care, like recognition. He reached out slowly, giving her time to move if she wished. She didn't. His fingers found hers, tentative at first, then intentional. Their hands fit not because they were perfect, but because they were willing. Her confession rose, unforced, carried on the quiet safety he offered. "I didn't realize how much I missed being seen," she said, almost to herself. "How much I missed being chosen." Her voice fractured gently on the last word, and he breathed in like he felt it, too, the ache of wanting to matter to someone. Alex didn't fill the silence with promises or grand gestures. Instead, he tightened his hold on her hand, slow, warm, grounding. A promise written not in words, but in presence. "I'm here," he murmured, just loud enough for her to hear over the fire's whisper. "Right now, I choose to be here, with you." Their fingers intertwined fully then, no hesitation left. The room didn't need music to make the moment feel whole. Everything essential was already present. 2 confessions, 2 softened hearts, and the tender beginning of something neither had expected when the day began. A holiday once meant for one was now shared, and both felt quietly, beautifully chosen. The hours slipped by like gentle tides, neither of them noticing how late it had grown until the fire settled into glowing embers and the house exhaled into silence. Outside, the world was muted beneath fresh snowfall, sidewalks washed in silver moonlight. The street was still untouched, as if time itself paused so their moment could stretch a little longer. Alex stood first. Morning didn't break violently. It arrived gently, like a soft hand brushing sleep from the edges of dawn. Pale sunlight crept across the living room floor, warming scattered shadows and faintly illuminating the blanket they had fallen asleep beneath. Elena woke first, slow and unhurried, the way one wakes from a dream they don't want to leave. Alex was still beside her, not distant, not turned away, but close enough that their shoulders almost touched. He slept with the ease of someone who finally felt safe, his breathing steady, his expression unguarded. For a moment, Elena simply watched him, the way one watches sunrise over quiet water, with awe, with stillness, with gratitude she couldn't yet name. She stood carefully, not wanting to wake him too soon, and walked to the kitchen to start the kettle. The smell of coffee rose into the air like memory and hope woven together. She set 2 mugs out, one plain white, one deep blue, and her fingertips lingered on the second handle longer than necessary. It felt symbolic. Natural, right? When she returned to the living room, Alex was awake. Not startled, just aware, eyes tracing the room as if he was making sure last night wasn't imagined. When he saw her standing there with coffee, something soft spread across his face. Not a grin, not a spark, but a quiet warmth that looked like home. "You stayed," he said, voice morning rough and honest. "And you slept like someone who needed rest," she replied with a gentle smile, handing him the blue cup. He took it carefully, fingers brushing hers, a subtle, familiar touch that didn't need explanation anymore. He sipped slowly, watching her over the rim, like every detail deserved to be remembered. They sat at the table once more, the same place where loneliness had lived just yesterday, replaced now by presence, laughter under breath, eyes that didn't look away too quickly. Snow glowed outside the window like polished silver, and for the first time in a long while, Elena felt no urge to fill the silence. It was warm enough to sit inside it. Eventually, he spoke. "I don't want this to be just one night," Alex said, voice steady but vulnerable. "Not a coincidence. Not a story I tell years later about a woman I should have stayed for." Her heart folded open at once. Not dramatically, just steadily, as if it had always been waiting for words like that. "I don't want it to be just one night either," she whispered. He reached for her hand, this time without hesitation. She let him lace their fingers together, felt the surety in his touch, the softness in his promise. Not possession, partnership, no fireworks, no declarations shouted into winter air. Just 2 people choosing each other, quietly, maturely, beautifully. Later, when he stood at her door to leave briefly and return with his things, he paused, snow catching in his hair like scattered pearls. She leaned forward, kissed his cheek softly, slow enough for him to feel it linger. "Come back soon," she said, voice calm, confident. He smiled. Not billionaire, not public figure, just a man who had found warmth where he least expected it. "I will," he promised, and she believed him. Because Thanksgiving wasn't lonely anymore. Because love didn't arrive loudly. It knocked gently and was invited in. And in the soft glow of morning, they both knew this was a beginning. Not an accident. A choice, beautifully mutual, quietly lasting.